A cold case killing in Cedar Rapids has remained unsolved for nearly 5 decades. The homicide of Maureen Brubaker Farley is approaching a milestone moment in July. It would have been her 65th birthday. Iowa's News Now anchor Cymphanie Sherman spoke with the investigator working tirelessly to bring justice to her family in this special report.
That was the worst news in our whole life.
September 21st, 1971. That's the day two young hunters found the body of 17-year-old Maureen Brubaker Farley. Her body laid across an abandoned car along this ravine in Cedar Rapids. That same day, her family receiving a call no one ever wants to get.
I hollered, David, Maureen's dead. And he said, oh, no, no, no. And he kept walking the floor and just saying, no, no, no. It was just it was like a nightmare. We couldn't believe it.
Lisa was just 4 years old when she learned her sister was gone forever. Nearly 5 decades later, and that day still seems like yesterday.
I remember the boys being in the bedroom and them coming out. And, I just always remember that.
Remembering losing dear Maureen, a young woman described as a firecracker loved by all.
I know when she was 14, every time I'd go in the bedroom to get the kids, a lot of times up for school, the screen was off the window and Maureen was gone.
And 5 years ago, the family receiving a glimmer of hope when Cedar Rapids investigator Matthew Denlinger took an interest in Maureen's case.
We kind of started all over from scratch in 2015. This was a new case to us, so we had to familiarize ourselves with all the details of the case and make a plan going forward.
But something giving them a leg up, looking at a man's DNA who was connected.
We knew that we could go out and we could find men that had been involved in the case, whose names were mentioned in the report, who maybe were acquaintances of Maureen back then, and we could collect buccal swabs from them, and we could send that to the state, and we could have those compared to our suspect sample.
So far, they have yet to find a match, but Denlinger is hopeful.
There are more people in those reports that haven't been found yet or located that we can still collect from.
Denlinger is determined to bring justice to this family, just like he did for Michelle Martinko's family earlier this year.
The one thing I take away from that is the reaction of Michelle's family, her sister, brother-in-law, right after we're done with that case. That was probably the most rewarding thing that I've done in my career. And to try to give that hope to other families is something we really try hard to do.
Our hope is never laid to rest, and that's exactly what all of us want. We always have hope that we can find out who was responsible for it.
New tonight, this month marks 49 years since the murder of Karen Street. Her body found in the Amana Mill race nearly 5 decades later, and still no strong leads. Iowa's News Now anchor Cymphanie Sherman tells us why new technology may be the answer in the latest edition of Iowa's Unsolved.
It's really hard to tell because generally there's no witnesses. There's no idea of the method of the crime. Sometimes bodies are never even found.
October 18th, 1971. That's the last time anyone ever saw 21-year-old Karen Street. 6 days later, her body was found submerged in the old Amana Mill race. She'd been shot 4 times in the head.
One of the issues that comes up in the Street case is in the late 60s, early 70s, hitchhiking was really prevalent. And unfortunately, in the United States, we had a lot of homicides that happened along highways. And they were people who were killed hitchhiking.
Which is exactly what Karen told her friends she was planning to do. Hitch a ride from Cedar Rapids to Iowa City.
It's an opportunity case. It's somebody who maybe didn't wake up one morning and say, I'm going to kidnap, murder, or whatever some victim, but they're in a position where it just becomes something they decide to do. They pull that trigger. It's something they probably thought of over time, and they finally done it.
And with so many hitchhiking murders across the Midwest during that time period, investigators believe Karen's killer may have killed more than once. But linking someone to the crime is the challenge due to no witnesses. It turned out Karen fought back, leaving her killer's DNA under her fingernails. Unfortunately, it isn't usable.
She was probably in the mill race up to 5 days. That DNA simply became rotten, essentially, and it basically makes the DNA go away as far as the testing that we use today.
As technology advances, there is hope.
What we're always hoping for is an advancement in the testing that might be able to bring out that DNA profile.
And investigators say that technology could be available as soon as next year. The main goal, bringing justice to families waiting decades for answers.
New details tonight on the day that shook Iowa City. A newborn found lifeless at the landfill on a freezing day just before Christmas back in 1992. That baby's identity is still a mystery to this day. Iowa's News Now anchor Cymphanie Sherman takes a closer look at what happened that day in this edition of Iowa's Unsolved.
We're banking on the fact that someone knows that she was pregnant and that she now does not have a baby and that she's not pregnant anymore, and we're hoping to get a lead that way.
December 21st, 1992, a day still filled with questions nearly 3 decades later. A garbage truck driver was dumping a load at the Iowa City landfill. That's when he spotted it, a baby's body laying in the middle of piles of trash.
The baby was dumped by one of those trucks. There are general areas that we can look at, and those are the ones that we're canvassing now.
It was the body of a newborn baby boy, just about 10 pounds, but he was already dead when police arrived.
It's here at the Iowa City landfill that a city garbage truck driver spotted the baby boy's body among trash.
Medical experts say the freezing temperatures help preserve the body. The story airing across local media, police hoping someone would come forward. That still has yet to happen. And nearly 3 decades later, an Iowa City detective is determined to find out what happened.
I looked at it and I worked these other cases, and for some reason I would find myself wondering about it. It just never went away.
Detective Gonzalez literally going back to the beginning of this case and starting from scratch. And he says he's not stopping until there's answers.
Why did this happen? Why was the baby there? And that can go a million different directions. But unfortunately, it always comes back to the same thing, is that we don't have an answer. And I think we deserve answers. I think baby John Doe deserves an answer as well. And it's hard for me to put that down, because those answers are there somewhere.
We're now heading into a 29th year with no answers after an unthinkable discovery in Johnson County. It was December 21st, 1992, when a baby boy's body was found in the Iowa City landfill. Baby John Doe was just a few days old. Now, we brought you this case last month as an Iowa's Unsolved installment, and now, for the first time, the man who found that body is sharing his story. Iowa's News Now anchor Cymphanie Sherman brings us the exclusive interview.
There's really no words to explain it. I mean, that's not something that you ever see, you know.
December 21st, 1992. It's a day Doug Jamison will never forget.
A gruesome discovery at the Iowa City landfill tops our news tonight.
He was in his early 20s, helping out at the Iowa City landfill on a day they needed a little extra hand. That's when he saw a sight he hasn't been able to shake for decades.
A person working at the landfill discovered the body of a newborn baby boy shortly after 12:30 this afternoon.
I thought I saw what was just a doll, and after looking a little bit more, there was a bag of some stuff there, kind of bloody or something like that. And so I got to looking a little closer and thought, that's not a doll. And so I stopped the dozer guy that was pushing the stuff in and told him better stop everything. And he come down and looked, and sure enough, it was a baby.
A lifeless baby, just days old, laying in the middle of piles of trash, the umbilical cord still attached.
It didn't really hit me until they took us all up to the entrance, and you know that it really was a baby, and all the cops and detectives started showing up.
Police combed the county, looking at each area this load could have come from.
There was only 4 dumps that were made in that site.
But 28 years later, and this baby's grave still reads Baby John Doe.
Police do know the baby was a white male carried full term, and that the baby's weight indicates the mother needs medical attention.
You'd think they would have came forward after all these years by now. Maybe now they will.
A hope Doug will continue holding on to.
Life is too precious nowadays. The world's falling apart, and it's a sad thing that somebody could do something like that. I can't imagine what would go through their head.